communists, firemen and the laws of money. Greetings and trust you are well. This video is going to take a different direction to discuss topics which are relevant to world events taking place and more importantly considerations. I have not wanted to make videos for entertainment purposes. I do not make videos for entertainment purposes, this is something which I have wanted to write about and it ties into many of the events we see taking place today. It is not about a specific dream but about insights, thoughts and the way I see things. If the nation wishes to have a future, it is important to understand the past, and in this discussion we have to discuss communism and things taking place. Let's discuss communists. For most people, the generation born post the 1980s, most of them have no clue about communism and how it works. For this generation, communism is nothing but a dinosaur, a byword. This is the real danger of communism, its ability to lay dormant like an AK-47 buried in mud. Though dormant, buried you can pull it out the mud years. Decades later and the gun will still be able to work perfectly and fire. Communism is alive, well and kicking, it's just morphed and most people cannot recognize it. Remember, communism, the tool comes from deep philosophy. It is in essence a form to defeat your enemy and weaken him to the point you can simply roll in and take over. Worse is that the local population will welcome you with open arms to invade. The people will see the enemy as the good guy and the good guy as the enemy. At the core it is mind control. Europe has been taken over by communists. All the climate, green activists, human rights pundits are communists. For years the climate brigade was beating the drums about climate change, the result was fracking, gas fracking was banned and the Europeans became reliant on Russia. The West through lobby groups, opened up the trade with communist countries, exporting all their manufacturing to these communist countries. Never thinking about the long-term ramifications. I am going to bring this round, I do not know how long this video will be, I will try explain it. Trying to explain this is going to be a challenge for me. I am going to point out how these communists are operating, what's going to take place next, and this ties in with the seer's words. I had a number of insights into this. Let's go back to the last 2 years, the lockdowns. It began in China. Then the West shut down their economies. Usually in the past, musicians, movie stars during the 1980s who were all anti-government, anti-war, all were telling us what garbage the government was, going back all the way to the Vietnam War. This was the communist working in the background. The last 2 years though, these same artists, musicians were telling everyone now all of a sudden to listen to the government, lock down your business, and to of course take the magic potion vaccine. A 360-degree turn from what they had been saying a few decades back.
All the human rights lobbyists working in the West are communist-infested groups.
These same groups pushed for immigration, and I am going to point out how this fits in with the SEER, the media collapse and world events. The virus has come and gone, but now, the alternative news sites have been pushing for and exposing the dangers of this vaccine that was pushed on the people. Notice prior to this, YouTube kicked off many content creators. They all flocked in their tens of millions to alternative platforms who call themselves free speech. I am going to tell you, this again is the communist agitating in the background. You do not know who finances, backs these alternative podcasts which are gaining so much traction. We know the media is run by the communists as well. Now the alternative media is exposing the lying media, this is now growing at an alarming rate. This is communism, to get the masses to distrust the governments. This is to create internal chaos within the state. I mentioned in the previous video, I had written material, it took me 8 hours to write. I mentioned in that material, the real virus was going to be unleashed. I had written in it, that with the Ukrainians fleeing, they would bring a new disease or virus with them. Well, it is here. Is it a coincidence the monkeypox comes shortly after this war breaks out and the Ukrainians are now in the West? This is the real virus or one of the real ones to hit us. Now you have an entire group of people in the alternative media not believing anything the government says at the time. The real viruses will be released, and at the same time these alternative media expose the vaccine injuries people have gotten. This is a recipe for disaster. The seer, Zena van Rensburg, prophet of South Africa, mentioned in one of his visions, he saw communism in the West and Russia going back to their old ways. He said something along the lines that the communists will agitate and cause chaos in Britain.
Now let me share the insight that came to me.
The alternative media in Britain is controlled by the communists. The alternative media like GB News have a huge following. Everyone on the channel was told 2 years ago that anyone talking about side effects from this vaccine were conspiracy theorists. Now they have a group of people who are coming onto their site to expose the impact and effects this is having. This is for a reason, and the weakening of Britain internally by the communists during this crisis with Russia and Ukraine. It is a war move by the communists tied to Russia to weaken the state from within.
With an increasing number of disgruntled and unhappy citizens now, they will turn on the government during the inflation, during the wheat shortages, food price hikes.
Combined with the people now getting ill from this vaccine and it becoming mainstream that people have gotten ill and even died from it. To top it off, the West have embraced this wave of migrants coming in from Ukraine. I am going to say something, I have no way to prove it, it is my gut that is telling me, and having studied how communists work. The president of Ukraine is working directly with the Kremlin to suck the West into a war at the weakest point. That Dr. Fayuki, I hope you can understand my pronunciation, sometimes this voice just does not cut it. Dr. Anthony Fauci said in an interview, he had a slip-up while talking on TV, that he and communists in China discussed this. Anthony Fauci is a Jesuit. He trained at a Jesuit school. So now we have the communists which got the world to lock down, got the governments to inflate their currencies by printing more money, the result is inflation. People having less money, the lobby groups get these Western governments to get involved in Ukraine, knowing that doing so is going to cause a famine. The BRICS nations are all working together, all communists. China is hoarding wheat, Russia will not sell their wheat, India will not export their wheat. Those countries combined probably control more than 45% of the world's wheat markets. The result will be, and is going to be, inflation piled up on top of inflation. This thing with Russia was well planned when to invade Ukraine. They knew the West would be at their weakest point, and communism, the whole tenet of communism, to control your enemies, moves. Now getting back to the seer's words. The seer mentioned the communists will cause chaos in Britain.
He said in the future, a few blacks and communists will cause problems.
So the Ukrainians are let in, all these refugees from Ukraine. Then all of a sudden we have this new monkeypox. Now can you begin to see how the communists will cause problems? The key word the seer used was African, or blacks along with communists would cause problems. Now how will they do this? None of the virus names that they choose are simply pulled out of a hat. Think tanks specifically give them names that people can hook onto and latch onto. These think tanks are communists and have hardliner communists working in the groups. They call it monkeypox and say it is from Africa. Now for the politically correct, even using the word banana let alone monkey sends these politically correct people into a wobble. They have chosen the word monkeypox and linked it to Africa. This is the incitement of Africa by the communists. They are going to push this agenda and make out the British are calling Africans monkeys and saying that monkeys spread it. I know it seems hard to believe. Watch how these communists run with this. This is going to cause race relations in Britain to really go sour and south. It will cost them their ties in Africa, and they are now having to put out one fire after another. There are simply not enough hands to juggle all these issues. You have Russia, Ireland, EU issues, you have inflation, low economic output, you have increasing social unrest, and then on top of it the communists will be pushing this narrative of monkeypox. It would be interesting to see who gave this virus this name and who decided to push this in the UK. They will infer blacks spread this virus.